A Boeing 737-800 operated by China Eastern carrying 132 people crashed in the Guangxi province early Monday. Joining us now is Kai von Rumohr, who is the Cowen Managing Director and Senior Research Analyst. Kai, thanks for taking the time here with us today to help us break this down a little bit further. Stock movement aside, respectfully to the families impacted by this tragic event, what details stood out to you from what we currently know right now?
Well, what stood out is that it's very hard to tell what happened. The 737-800, Boeing produced 5,000 of them. They have a great track record. This particular plane was 6 years old, so if it had a manufacturing defect, one would have found it out by now. China Eastern, the third largest airline in China, also has an excellent track record of safety. So it's very hard to figure out from what we know today exactly what went wrong.
When do you believe that we'll start to get some more of that data, continuing to think about, and as we're seeing some of the visuals here as well, right, continuing to think about the type of crash it was and where the location of it was as well?
So what'll happen is the investigators will look for the black box and they'll look for the cockpit voice recorder. Because this crashed on land as opposed to in the ocean, those should be easier to locate. And then they will go over the data and try to figure out exactly what happened.
Now, for Boeing, hard not to recognize this is the third crash in 4 years of a Boeing aircraft. A pretty eye-opening Netflix documentary that many may have seen as well that actually gave us a little bit more education for those who watched on the black box and what particularly is so valuable about that piece of equipment within the plane. Has the consumer perception of the company been altered?
Well, I think certainly. Now that it's been recertified, I think it was starting to get, to come back and be more positive. But obviously, this is a potential setback. So unless it's determined this was clearly pilot error, clearly sabotage or something like that, I think it will be, more difficult for them. And, we'll see when we actually have the final data. The evaluation of the data will be decided on by China. They may bring in the FAA, they may bring in the US and NTSB, and they may choose not to do so. So they will be basically the folks controlling, what comes out regarding the data.
And just clarifying as well, for the sake of all of the information, the context here as well, that this was not the same as the 737 MAX. However, on the executive front, David Calhoun took over as CEO following the 737 MAX crashes. What might the difference in response be from Calhoun versus Dennis Muilenburg, the prior CEO?
Well, it's going to depend totally on what the answers are. Dennis basically, did not kind of react quickly. I think Calhoun, if it's proven that this is a design error, I'm sure he would react much more quickly. But remember, this is a 737NG. Boeing produced 7,000 of them since 1998. So this has been a very well-proven plane. So I would say the much, much more likely situation is this is either pilot error, maintenance error, or sabotage. Those are the more likely scenarios when a plane goes down. And, I would guess that's more likely in this case. But, again, that will depend on what the cockpit voice recorder and black box tell us.
At a time when international conflict makes the pathway for U.S. companies operating in Russia or China more contentious, is there risk of further action by China prompted by the crash that would impact as well here the further perception of Boeing or just the company?
That's a great question. I think certainly the increasing strains in U.S.-China relations probably have some impact in terms of China's anxiousness to take the maxes that they have on order, and so we'll see. It might.
Lastly, here, while we have you, operationally, what step do you expect from Boeing following this crash?
Well, I think they're not going to say anything until we have some of the data on what actually happened. There's not a whole lot they can say beyond expressing sorrow for the family of the people who perished in the crash.